All right, class. First off, as always, good day. I'm glad you're here. So, for those of you guys who remember, today, Tuesday, the 14th of February, I'm not in class because, again, I'm being checked on by the doctor, maybe even right now as we speak, and this video is going on. Um, so, today's lesson is going to be about monopolies and the railway industry. This is going to be a pretty big lesson. So, hopefully, uh, we can get through this quickly. You know, I really want to be here in class to teach you that kind of stuff, but this is the next best thing. So let's go ahead and get started with this lesson. So we're going to analyze how the railroad changed America and its politics. We're examine two very significant people, Andrew Carnegie and John Rockefeller, and how they contributed to America's growth. And lastly, we're going to create an argument on whether monopolies are a good thing or a bad thing. Specifically, we're going to look at trusts of monopolies, and we're going to explain that later on. And hopefully, this picture of it will help you understand it. So let's go ahead and get to the warm up. All right, so here's your warm up picture. Now, I don't know if you could see it or not, but on top of the octopus's head, it says Standard Oil. You're going to find out about this company later on. But as you can see, it has its grips. If you look at the tentacles, it's grabbing things from the ocean on one, a building over here up front, it's grabbing some people. Another side of it's grabbing another building, another government building, because you can see the American flag waving from them. And if you look at let me use my camera. So in this far corner of the picture, you're gonna see a building. That is the White House. And if you see, he doesn't have it quite yet. So my question to you is this: based off the picture and the evidence and what you see, do you think this octopus will get its hands around the White House? So if you notice, it's gotten this hold on everything else basically, and some seem to be more gripped and tighter than others. What do you think? Okay, based off your analysis, based off what you think, you know, um, do you think it's going to get to the White House eventually? Why or why not? And if it does, do you think it's going to be like a total encompassing, taking over completely, or do you think it's barely going to hold on? What do you think? What's your belief? Okay, so think about it. Pause the video, write your response because we're moving on in three, two, one. So here's the thing. Before the Civil War, we had about 35,000 miles of railroad tracks laid down. By 1900, this number is almost going to jump by like four times. It reaches up 200,000 miles of railroad tracks. Now here's the thing. After the Civil War, like I told you guys from the previous lessons, the railroads didn't quite connect. Well, when Lincoln was president, he actually wanted this to happen. It's called the Pacific Railway Act. He had two companies, the Union Pacific and the Central Pacific. He basically paid them to complete a railway system that could connect East Coast to West Coast. Okay, now this was something people have been dreaming about. Just how can you get from the New York to California, San Francisco, in one continuous trip? That's where the whole Oregon Trail came from, and all these trails through wagon. But it's another thing to get it through railroad. How can you connect that? And it took time. It took a lot of time. But eventually they did it. On May 10th, 1869, at Promontory Summit, Utah. That was a meeting point between the East Coast and the West Coast railroad tracks meeting up. And there's a picture of it up on top there. You can see the people. Um, a gold and silver spike were hammered, you know, to signify the completion of the railways. Now, I've had some students in the past going, "Oh hell, there's some gold and silver spikes out there. I'm gonna dig that thing up." Thing is, guys, they already dug it up. As soon as they ceremoniously spiked it in, they basically took the real one, the gold and silver ones out, and they put real ones in. As you can see from that bottom picture, the real one are on display, um, I believe, in Utah. So good luck. All you're gonna do is take out some spikes that are metal, iron, and they're, I think they're steel actually. And yeah, no. Now, how did trains make money? How did these railway people make money? Basically, they made money, charge people for the cargo, how much it weighed, and how far it was going to go. Now, here's the problem. When the East Coast and West Coast lines first were created, that company that had that line could charge up the wazoo because they were the only company that had a line going all the way across from New York to San Francisco, and they could charge whatever amount because it's the only line that went that way. But as time went on, as we got closer to the 1900s, more lines were created that could reach the West Coast. So if that company, like, hey man, you're charging way too much, we'll go with this other company, charge half as much to meet demand to make sure that, hey, at least we're getting some money. The cost of delivering cargo dropped, and it got to the point where typically a ton, which is about 2,000 pounds of material, whether it's coal, water, lumber, went from 2 cents to basically 3/4 of a cent, 3/4 of 1 cent. So instead of not 1 cent, 0.75 of 1 cent. Okay. So the price dropped dramatically as more railways were coming in, but still, a tree big tree does not just weigh 1 ton, it weighs several. And still, coal, copper, all that stuff, it weighs as you put it in containers. Okay. So the US government kind of like to try to stop prevent progress from being stopped, they awarded land grants to railway companies, basically saying, hey, yeah, you can buy this land, and things like that to help you progress. If you need to make a line that goes to down south to Arizona, sure, you know, and people started making tons of money because then they would figure out, hey, this company is going south towards Arizona. They're going from this line down from this place, let's say Kansas City, towards Arizona. People were buying up that land that went through, you know, and they would sell it to the uh, railway company. And sometimes it was people who had that inside knowledge that, hey, at this place, at this point, the railway is going to buy some land. They're going to bring the line that way. So people jumped ahead and paid other people for that land. So it's like if you knew between Fresno and Selma, the government was going to use this land, you would go and buy that land from that people, pay them. If they're selling the land for $100,000, you'd pay them $200,000, get them off, and then the government would come and sell. Ask you how much you want for this land. Give me a cool $1 million. They'd be like, okay. So you just bought that land for $200,000, and now you sold it for $1 million. That's what these guys did. Okay. Now, there were a lot of people who basically saw this and were like, whoa, 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 that's some shady stuff going on. How come these guys are able to do so much and get away with so much? So they looked at railway owners like Cornelius Commodore Vanderbilt, which the Vanderbilt family are still pretty wealthy to this day. Um, they basically saw that how these guys, they were like accused of being swindlers, swindling investors, swindling taxpayers, bribing government officials, and basically cheating on their contracts and debts. These guys who actually did that stuff were known as robber barons. Okay. And there were quite a bit of them who did that. There were quite a bit of these um, railway owner guys who were swindlers of investors, taxpayers, cheating on their debts and things like that. Um, However, there were some that didn't do this stuff, but they were still, hey, guilt by association. You're just like these guys, you know. So yeah, so all those railway guys were seen as robber barons. Okay, now here's the thing though: did bribery happen? Absolutely, absolutely, it happened. Especially a lot during this time. That's why a lot of these politicians and especially the presidents are known as the forgotten presidents. Because state and federal government were entangled in the funding of the railway, and in order for things to be look appropriate and to make things look like they were actually done legitimately, people were bribed. Yeah, okay, and that happened quite a bit at this time. Now, a monopoly, it's not just a game. And if you've ever played the game, like completely without some of your family getting all mad and tossing the game, I'm speaking of experience. I've had some siblings who've done that when they've lost. They get all mad and start throwing things around the game. It happens. But if you have ever got to finish the game, you know the point of the game is to own everything. And that's exactly what a monopoly is. It's a company corporation that controls the entire market, whatever that market may be. That market could be lumber, oil, electricity. It could be owning all the corn, you know, things like that. It could be owning all the um, railways, the railway tracks, whatever it may be. It has to be just one market, though. Okay, it can't be a little bit here, a little bit here. No, no, no. It's when they own all of one thing. That's a monopoly. Now, some people thought, oh, monopolies are bad. And a lot of those people who feel that way felt, well, let's say oil. If somebody owns all the oil, then they can raise the price to whatever they want. Because yeah, you need oil for everything. So if one person, one company owns it all, they have no competition, so they can raise the prices whatever they want. People who don't like monopolies tend to point this out. So, like Walmart is a great example of this. They lower the price of their items to where the old mom and pop stores that people used to go to, now their prices are way up here. They can't compete with Walmart because Walmart buys in bulk. So that competition then goes away. They can't compete with Walmart. And then once that mom and pop stores go away and all these other stores go away, then Walmart raises their prices. So what used to be, hey, toilet paper for $1, now all of a sudden it's $5. And Walmart's like, well, hey, the way it is. So if you don't like these prices, you're going to have to go elsewhere. And a lot of times elsewhere is places around, and it's those Walmarts, other Walmart stores, or those people are going to have to drive really, really far away to find a cheaper place. So Walmart has done this before in other countries and things like that. And people who don't like that fear that's what's going to happen here. And it has happened here and there, little spots around our country. Okay. Now, people who support monopolies, who see nothing wrong with the company owning all of one thing, they say, well, no, 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 no. See, you don't get it. They're going to keep their prices down because if they raise their prices too high, they're going to go for an alternate. You know, they're going to fear a competition is going to come up, which that's kind of stupid thinking because yes, competition would come up if they have their prices up here. If they own almost everything and competition comes up, let's say now someone opens up another oil, they discover oil. These guys are so rich and powerful, they can crush these guys, buy them out, close them out, whatever. Okay. Now, to own a monopoly became illegal. And I use that with the quotes in some states. Some states it wasn't illegal, but there were a lot of states that said no, it's illegal. So corporations found a way around it through the law by creating this thing called trust. Now, trust is a legal concept where one person manages another person's property. So they go, no, 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 no. I don't own everything. You know, no, it's this part of the trust. It's broken up in little pieces, things like that. No, 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 no. See, we don't own it all. You know, it's this little company, this little company, this little company. You know, we just, as a trust, control that. You know, it's not one company; it's a bunch of us broken up, but they all collect together. You know, so Standard Oil became the first trust in 1882, and then came holding companies. Now these are companies that they don't make anything. Okay, they don't really create anything. It's just their job is they're like a kind of like a dummy corporation. It owns stock on companies that produce things. Okay, but they make them like, oh, this company controls this company. You know, again, and that company does not create anything. They don't do nothing. It's just signify like, oh, we don't own it. This company does. We don't get all the profits. This company does. Well, that company is a dummy corporation that they own too. Yeah, it's just that like the cup thing. You know, here's the ball. Moving the cups around. You know, find the cup, find the ball, find the ball. Where's the cup? Here, where's it at? Things like that. It's just to confuse people, and it's the legal loopholes that are around at that time. What they're doing, they're shuffling around things like that. Where's the money come from? Where's, you know, really owns this stuff? Who really owns these things? That's all it is. They're finding legal loopholes and they're making people look over here, over here, over here. But the truth is, they're palming the ball the whole time. They own it all. Okay. Now, there were two major monopolies at this time uh, in the Second Industrial Revolution. First off was Carnegie Steel Company, which is now known as U.S. Steel, and the other was the Standard Oil Company. Okay. Now, the guy you see up on top there, that is Andrew Carnegie. He controlled Carnegie Steel. And the guy on the bottom there, that is John D. Rockefeller. He controlled Standard Oil. Now, these two guys were very competitive with one another. They always try to show, like, hey, I'm richer than you, I'm more powerful than you. And these two guys would end up being the two richest men in American history. Okay. Even to this day, if you took his total wealth and stuff like that, the guy on the bottom, John D. Rockefeller, is still considered the richest man in American history, more than Musk and Bezos and all those guys. His total net worth and wealth way ahead of anyone today. All right, so Andrew Carnegie, he was a Scottish immigrant. He came when he was very, very young to the Americas. And the thing is, he worked for a railway executive and businessman named Thomas Scott. Now, Scott was a man who was building the railroads, you know, making those extra lines and things like that to go from New York to, like, you know, Kansas City and things like that. So Carnegie really learned from him, watching him, observing him, listening to him. And he really caught the eye of Scott. And Scott basically realized, you know, this kid is smart. He's ambitious. You know, he has that drive. He wants to learn. He wants to work hard and things like that. So he basically told him, "Hey, you come under my wing, and I'll show you the business. I'll show you how it's done." So when Carnegie got older, he created his own company called the Keystone Bridge Company. Now, this company just got a basically like a contract, a deal to build a bridge crossing the Mississippi. Now, that might not seem like big thing nowadays, but back then that was huge, huge because there was a lot of bridges that were trying to get through cross from one side of Mississippi to the other. But the thing is, Mississippi was so big, so massive, so strong, the currents and things like that, that a lot of companies made these bridges that weren't the top best. And, they were limited in their structure and how strong they were. So he decided, what, instead of using iron, which, um, it gets rusted and things like that, he decided, well, why don't we use steel? Some people are like, no, I don't know about steel. It takes so long to make and things like that. So he took a trip to Europe and he found out that these guys can actually make steel a lot faster and a large amount, and to form it and everything. So, what used to take about 2 weeks' time to create a certain amount of steel, to create it, to cool it, to form it, things like that, it took about 2 weeks. He was able to get it down to 15 minutes. And that was just revolutionary. So he was able to create the bridge. There were little things he had to do to make people feel safe, which included an elephant crossing the bridge. Old superstition thing back in the day. Um, but he did it. And his buddy Scott, his mentor, basically looked at him and goes, "Okay, I see what you're doing here. Okay, you know what? Let's work together and look at your first plant to create steel." And he goes, "Because you're on something here, kid, and I want to help you out." So he does. And right away, people start putting orders for steel, because now they were like, wow, instead of waiting 2 weeks for my order, I can get it in no time flat. So instant success for Andrew Carnegie. Now, John D. Rockefeller came from the middle class family in Ohio. Thing is, at a young age, man, he was a hustler. I mean, working, doing anything he could to make some money. He sold candy, he raised turkeys and sold them. He did odd jobs for neighbors, whether it's like basically cutting the grass, cleaning, fixing something, whatever it could be to make some money. Um, Sad to say, his dad was not that great of a guy, and at times took his son's money. So yeah, it was pretty bad for Rockefeller at the beginning. Now, in 1863, 4 years after the first oil well was drilled in Titusville, Tennessee, Rockefeller and several of his friends, his partners, entered the oil industry and invested in a refinery in Cleveland. And in 1865, he basically bought out his partners. Basically said, you know what? I want to own this myself. How much would it cost me to buy your share of this company? And they told him the price. He signed the check, and there you go. Now, in 1870, he brought his two brothers and a group of men, and they formed the Standard Oil Company in Ohio. Okay. And what they did was something unique. So instead of out competing, you know, other competitors, he would basically go to his competitor and say, "Look, I know you're pulling down this much money, this and that, but you're also paying debts and this and that, la la la. How about this? I'll buy your refinery and pay off your debts, but you just got to give me the company." Okay, so you'll make money from the buyout, and I'll take care of your debts. You just got to sign it over to me. So a lot of these companies, they did that. They signed over their refineries, their pipelines, and things like that. And basically, he became the distributor of oil from America. And by 1882, he controlled 90% of all the oil wells and refineries and pipelines in America. 90%. That's a huge amount. Now, here's how cheap this guy was. So instead of like, hey, we need to buy some more pipes from this company, things like that, we need to buy some more rivets and, to secure the pipelines. No, he basically made sure that his company made and created the pipes, the screws, everything that they would need. He made sure that they made it so that they wouldn't have to spend their money on anyone else. Kept it all within the company. Yeah. Okay. Now, I know some of you guys are like, oh, that's smart. That's this and that. But here's the problem. That doesn't help the economy. It helps this company, but it doesn't help the economy. Okay. So, yeah. All right. So here's your question. Now, if you recognize this picture, it was earlier on. But the thing is, this picture is an amazing, amazing picture. So if you can see, this is a picture of the Senate. Okay. All right. So the quiet question is, what is this artist trying to say about the Senate and the different trusts? So if you look in the background, the people says like steel trust, copper trust, Standard Oil, iron, sugar, coal, right? What do you notice about all the trust? You know, what do you notice about all the trust, the way they look and things like that? Okay, look at the Senate, the people on the bottom here. Look how some of them are looking. Things like that. So, what do you think this artist is trying to say about the Senate on the bottom, those little people, and uh, the trusts in the background? Okay, so go ahead, write your response to this. Once you do, you're basically done with this lesson. All right, so good job. Hopefully you learned something new. Hopefully you enjoyed this lesson. Okay, so I will see you guys on Thursday or on Wednesday if you're watching this. Um, so you guys, you take care, you be safe, and I'll see you guys later. Okay.